Hello people of the internet. On today's special report, something that I've neglected to talk about for quite some time, but I think now it deserves to be talked about. The Ghostbusters reboot is suffering from a possible $70 million loss at the box office and may be putting its potential sequels in a lot of jeopardy of not being made. We'll talk a lot about those situations and whose fault it might actually be for what happened in the first place. Of course, there's going to be some strong opinions on this particular issue, so I know I'll probably piss someone off regardless of what I actually say. I will try to be as fair as possible when explaining my own opinions. My name is JD Shadow, and my execution, the special report, will start right about now. Well, in a piece of news that might not be very much unexpected, Hollywood Reporter, they reported, no pun intended, about the Ghostbusters 2016 reboot is heading for a $70 million plus loss, and the sequels might be in jeopardy of being absolutely obliterated. According to the Hollywood Reporter, it says immediately upon the opening of Ghostbusters in mid-July, top Sony executives boldly declared a sequel to Paul Feig's all-female reboot of Ivan Reitman's 1984 classic. While nothing has been officially announced yet, there is no doubt in my mind it will happen, said Roy Brewer, president of worldwide distribution at Sony. However, that was the last public mention of the sequel, and as of August the 7th, the Ghostbusters reboot had earned just under $180 million at the global box office, including $117 million domestically. The film still hasn't opened in a few markets, including France, Japan, and Mexico, but box office experts say it will have trouble getting to $225 million despite a hefty net production budget of $144 million, plus a big marketing spend. The studio had said break even would be $300 million. It goes on to say that Sony hardly is alone in suffering from audience rejection of sequels this summer, but film chief Tom Rothman and his team, along with partner Village Roadshow, had high hopes for launching a live-action Ghostbusters universe. Now they are preparing for steep losses of about $70 million plus and an uncertain future for the franchise. Sony won't comment on whether it has managed a sequel to the Netherworld, but perhaps telling a rep said the studio actively is pursuing an animated Ghostbusters feature that could hit theaters in 2019 and an animated TV series, Ghostbusters Ecto Force, which is eyeing an early 2018 bow. Both are being guided by Reitman, who firmly is back in charge of the Ghostbusters empire via Ghost Corps, a subsidiary with a mandate to expand the brand across platforms. It was former Sony chief Amy Pascal who first embraced Feig's vision for the live-action reboot, not Reitman or Rothman. We are very proud of the bold movie Paul Feig made, which critics and audience loved. That's saying a whole hell of a lot. A studio rep told THR, it has enlivened a 30-year-old brand and put it into the modern zeitgeist. As a result, we've had many ideas in the works to further exploit the Ghostbuster universe. The language they use in order to describe that whole thing is suspect. Feig hasn't said whether he'll return. This is probably before the news that he would not do any more reboots. Stars Melissa McCarthy, Kristen Wiig, Leslie Jones, and Kate McKinnon are said to be signed for 2 potential sequels, and initially they said they were game. But what about now? Ghostbusters is on ice until further notice, said box office analyst Jeff Bach. I just can't fathom the creative talents behind it. Big, McCarthy, Wiig, etc. slogging out another one when the reception to the first one was so mediocre. Sony disputes the amount of the potential loss, insisting the revenue streams from merchandising and such attractions as a new Ghostbusters exhibit at Madame Tussauds and a theme park ride in Dubai will help defray any deficit. The studio also notes that the number of people renting the 1984 film has soared over the summer, which might be a blessing and a curse for them. This loss calculation is way off, said the Sony rep, with multiple revenue streams including consumer products, gaming, location-based entertainment, continued international rollout, and huge third-party promotional partnerships that mitigated costs. The bottom line, even before co-financing, is not remotely close to that number. Okay, so first of all, that was a bit of a spin by Sony. to say that, hey, this calculation is way off, because where are you gonna get that revenue back from? That regardless of why people didn't go to see it, where are you getting this notion that somehow the movie, the 2016 movie that had 70 million plus in revenue losses, is going to make up for it by other means of revenue, when it's the movie that's the problem? Where are you getting that information? Where is that logic coming from? I don't understand where this Sony rep is coming from here with saying, hey, there's all these rides, there's all these toys that we're making, they're gonna be rolled out in this point and this time. But there's more to Ghostbusters than just this 2016 reboot, which fell flat on its face. And you can say whatever you want about why it did, but the bottom line is it did, one way or the other. At the end of the day, the bottom line is it wasn't received well, and you just have to bite the bullet on that. And there's other Ghostbusters themed merchandise that has nothing to do with this latest iteration of this movie that you can use, but that doesn't mean that the movie is going to get back that revenue. And apparently now they're looking at a possibility that the reboot is not going to receive any bit of sequels directly related to it. And to be quite honest, there's a lot of people at fault for this, and the most important person that we have to put fault is Amy Pascal, because she's the one who not only put on Paul Feig and just drug him into here kicking and screaming, and did whatever she had to do in order for him to get on board with this, since he's the one that refused 4 times before he finally got persuaded to come on board. He didn't want to do it. He had no intentions on ever making this film in the first place, and the only way that he was going to get on board is if he could do a reboot with the cast that he wanted for it, and not just any women, the 4 women that he essentially chose, which is McCarthy, Kristen Wiig, Leslie Jones, and Kate McKinnon, who are talented women. Here's the whole point. These 4 women are very talented. They can be very funny. You can say what you want about Melissa McCarthy and Leslie Jones, but from what I hear, Kate McKinnon is probably one of the strongest stars on SNL right now, and Kristen Wiig is very, very funny. So why in the hell do you cripple their talent, do you cripple their ability to be funny with a script that falls flat, with CGI that does absolutely nothing to enhance the immersion and the experience, and a paint-by-the-numbers reboot of a film that is so classic to so many people, and which is still holds up to this day? Why would you cripple their ability like that? Why would you, to a movie which has become such a political football recently when it comes to feminism, when it comes to stuff like female representation in movies and video games and stuff like that? This was the political football here, and you cripple their ability. You cripple that ability for other movies with female leads to be made. When you do this kind of stuff, when you make something that falls flat, when you make something that just has no substance to it, this is not the fault of females being in this role. It has to do with the director not giving a crap about the source material, with the film chief who is 100% ready to make it into a political football. You have a film studio who is ready, willing, and able to deflect any legitimate criticisms and twist it and turn it into somehow being a chastising of the movie studio because they cast women into the role at all. Where in the hell do you get that somehow you're gonna make money back off of something that had so much wrong with it? Paul Feig, okay, he can be a really good director, but this is not the type of movie he should be making. I will admit, I got into the heat. I got into the performances of Sandra Bullock and Melissa McCarthy in that movie. That was the only movie from his that I've actually watched. And not a lot of people liked it, but I kind of got into it. I kind of enjoyed it. I wouldn't like watch it again, or I would watch it if it's on HBO or something like that. I wouldn't go out my way to get on a Blu-ray or anything like that, but I will no doubt go and watch it if it's on, because hey, it's something to watch and it's harmless and I'll come back satisfied. But here's the thing, that's the kind of movie that he is known to make, and it does succeed for him. Something like Ghostbusters needs a lot better care to it. You can have the gender swap, you can have whatever you want in the movie as long as the material that is built around them works. And in this sort of situation, it did not work. Their talents got exceptionally crippled by the source of the material that they were given. And that will be the truth. That will be the situation with any big name talented movie star that gets a crap script or a crap situation that they have to work through. And to be quite honest, that is very good for these 4 females. If they were able to get good performances, they were able to have their performances be judged well, despite the script being crap, despite the CGI not working, despite the jokes falling flat. At the very least, they put out a good performance, and that should be commended for them. But this essentially became a political football, and that's one of the other reasons why people were pushed away. When you get criticized for whatever it is, whether it be the trailer, whether it be the CGI, whether it be something about the writing, or something like how you're putting these females into a role and then building just a house of cards around them, and it's going to fall flat as soon as they try to put it out there to the public to see. The second that happened, you go and address it directly. You don't try to deflect it and say it's something that it's not. Look what happened with James Wolfe and what he said, like he wasn't going to review it. He never once mentioned the fact, oh, I hate women, or I don't like the fact that women being cast. And somehow, some way, they twisted around and made it into, oh, well, he's just a man baby, or he's crying because women were cast in the roles. When did he ever say that? When did I ever escape his mouth? When did he ever say that outside of that, oh, it was a gender swap, which what it is? Who's denying that? That is part of the reason why people were turned off. This became this political football that we were going to die on. And yes, there should be more females in movies. There should be more people of color. There should be more minorities being casted into significant roles in these films. But you're seeing with this whole situation with Ghostbusters that when you build a house of cards around them, when you don't give them good scripts to work with, when you build a crap story around it and you just insert them for the sake of having them to make them into a sort of selling point to where that's the only real reason anybody would want to go see it, it devalues the notion of having them in there, and it hurts the possibility of more movies being made that use people of color, that use females, that use minorities in these significant roles. Because they'll think, okay, that didn't work, so we shouldn't do stuff like that in the future. We'll start casting males and not cast anybody of minorities. That hurts the possibility of more of these things being made that will actually be good. They just announced a all-female Ocean's 11 spinoff just a few days ago, maybe on the day that I record this. And you know what? I think it'll do quite well because those females that were cast for these roles are freaking good, and I would welcome that. And Ocean's 11 seems to be a perfect fit for something like that, and I welcome that. I would welcome something like that because they're not trying to shame people into going to see it on the back of them somehow being bigoted if they don't see a film like that. And that's why people did not go see it. It's not because, oh, we didn't see it because we're sexist against women. They didn't see it because they didn't want to be involved in that political back and forth battle in which it gets very nasty right now, to the point where I don't blame anybody for just saying, you know what, I don't want any part of it. I don't want to be drugged into it. I don't want to be drugged into something in which the littlest thing that anyone says is going to be chastised by people who will destroy someone else's life over it. The littlest thing is going to get chastised like that, or has a possibility for it. If I tweet something saying I didn't like Ghostbusters for X and Y reason, that has to do with something, who wants that? Who wants to get involved in that? I don't blame people for not wanting to get into that sort of political back and forth because of the vitriol from both sides. There is no one side that is innocent from instigating and provoking the other side. They both have a lot of dirty laundry they have to air out. They both need to have a bit of a cooling off period. And for the rest of us, we just didn't want to get involved in it. And we just didn't like the fact that we were going to be called names, or we were going to be labeled just because we didn't want to see a movie because they misused the capable talent there. These 4 women were misused in roles that they would have been better at if they had better material to go on, and that's it. That's the only reason why it failed. Had nothing to do with females. It had nothing to do with that. It had nothing to do with gender anybody was. It had everything to do with what was around them, and you will see that time and time again of big name stars that get crap scripts. They work through it even though the script is crap, even though everything else is just a house of cards, as I said. The performances of the 4 women were viewed as being exceptionally well. So it wasn't their fault that the script sucked. It had nothing to do with them, and they should probably say, hey Paul, we don't want to be a part of this anymore because you effed it up. It was him and Amy Pascal. It should never be the 4 women who were forced into taking this sort of script and trying to do something with it. And to their credit, they tried. They literally tried. I mean, if this script was written by Ivan Reitman and using those 4 women and this whole thing being rebooted with women with Ivan Reitman at the helm, you know what would happen? It would probably be doing pretty well. It would probably be received well because he kind of knows what he wants out of the films. He kind of knows what he wants to do with it. And from the looks of things, he kind of wants to continue the franchise. He kind of wants to continue things with the fact that he has the Ghost Cores and wanting to expand the brand across these platforms. He wants to expand this stuff. You don't deny him the opportunity to do that and put in somebody who needed to have 4 or 5 different attempts to get him involved for him to get involved. And you have to persuade him even then to have him being drug into direct this. This was effed up beyond belief. And the usual trolls, which you probably should ignore anyway because you're giving them the opportunity to expand on what they're doing, are not to blame for it. But neither are the females who were cast for it. The females who were cast for it did good despite what they had to work with. And I think that's the best way to say it without offending anybody, is that those women deserved 10 times better than what they got from Paul Feig and Amy Pascal, who I assume has been demoted, at least in Sony, after this whole debacle, and the way that they handled the criticisms and the way that they handled all this stuff. They should have just said, you know what, maybe it's not the best thing in the world, maybe it's something that we kind of botched on, but we think we have a good movie here and we'll let the actual movie speak for itself. That's what they should have done. And instead, they used the political football method. They used the whole shaming method, and you know what, it didn't work because nobody wants to get shamed because they didn't like a movie for X and Y reason. As long as it's like legitimate criticism, it had nothing to do with, oh, they're females, I hate women, blah, blah, blah. 9 out of the 10 people who were criticizing the film never brought that into the discussion. At least they didn't bring it into discussion until you made it a part of it. That was their fault. I mean, if you really, really think that the average moviegoer is not going to go see a movie with a female protagonist or a female in a significant role, why the hell are you seeing Suicide Squad nearly break records right now? That movie is getting blasted by critics, and yet it is pulling in over $200 million in its first week. If you're seeing that happen when one of the most iconic villains in the Batman lore, the most iconic female villain outside of maybe Poison Ivy and Catwoman in the Batman lore, is the lead in that film, as far as I'm concerned at least, then it is proof that when you go into Ghostbusters, it had nothing to do with the fact that women were casted at all. That was not the reason why people did not go see it. It's because you made it to a political football. You gave the women nothing to work with despite their talents and despite the fact that they actually did work through the crap script that you had for them, and despite the fact that you made them into stereotypical tropes anyway, from somebody who kind of didn't even want to be there and phoned it in anyway, instead of having somebody who actually wanted to do the script in the first goddamn place, and would give these women 10 times of a much better script than Paul Feig could have possibly have given them, and just given more care to source material that you're basing profiting it off of and not make it into a paint-by-numbers reboot. That's all you really had to do. And you could have still had those gender swap cast members. You could have still had the very same women who were cast, and it would have done well because the script would have been done well. The CGI would have had a much better look to it. You would have had a much better movie for those 4 women to work with. And you know what? The people who went to see it, the people who went on YouTube and told of their opinion on the film, most of them, with the exception of Amy Joe, who hated the film, they didn't say it was that bad. They said it was so-and-so. Bookie said it was so-and-so. Doug Walker said it was so-and-so on Sibling Rivalry, and then he did a Nostalgia Critic review of it, and he said it was so-and-so. It wasn't really that bad, but it wasn't that good either. Most people who went to see it and did a video on it said, I mean, it was not that great. It wasn't to the standard that we wanted out of Ghostbusters, and it wasn't as good as it could have been, but it wasn't terrible. And yes, the reviews were mixed. You had Angry Joe absolutely hating it, and he had legitimate reasons for hating it. He hated the film, and most of the people that he went with to go see it hated it as well. They despised it. And you know what? They had legitimate reasons for despising it. And I have to ask for those people who chastised those people who were criticizing the film, did you guys actually go and watch these videos and actually listen to what they had to say? Did you read what they had to say? Did you listen to what James Rolfe had to say, or Angry Joe, or Doug Walker? Did you actually listen to what they had to say? Because I'm pretty sure the words "I'm sexist" or "I'm bigoted" never came out of their mouths. It never hit their paper. It never hit their screen. And yes, we can debate. We can have our difference of opinion, and that's okay. People might have a different opinion from what I'm saying right now, and that's okay. But when you go into so much vitriol over something that should never have been this much of political football to begin with, then you devalue the whole movement behind wanting better representation of minorities in films and giving minorities, talented minorities, a script that is a house of cards and nothing for them to work on, that devalues their talent, that tells them that that's the only thing they're talented enough to do, then that is an insult to the minorities. That's an insult to females. That's an insult to anybody who gets a script like that, who has that sort of script that they have to work with. You want to know why Denzel Washington is one of my favorite actors in Hollywood? Because not only is he exceptionally talented, but he's usually in films that he is good at, that are really, really good. Remember the Titans was an awesome film. It was one of the best films I think has ever been made. It's an exceptional film. It's based on a true story about race and about a black coach having to deal with racism at that point in time. And you know what? He did it exceptionally well because it's Denzel freaking Washington for one thing, and second of all, he had a tremendous script to work with. He had an awesome script to work with. He had awesome people working with him that he had exceptional chemistry with, that could play off of him and he could play off of them, and they worked together so well. The whole chemistry worked really well in that film, and it works in most films that he does, including Crimson Tide. That is a underrated film. That is such an underrated film. Him and Gene Hackman worked exceptionally well, and I'm really singing the praises of Denzel Washington right now. But you know what? He's a person of color, and he is one of my favorite actors. And you know why? Because he makes great films. You want to know another great film that has a person of minority status has as a leading role? Scarface. Al Pacino. Probably one of the greatest films of all time. And we quote that thing to hell and back, and there's a great reason as to why. Probably one of the only 3-hour movies I will probably watch from beginning to end countless times, because holy hell, that's a great film. And the character of Tony Montana is such one badass character, and you get to see these characters be as flawed as they can be, which is okay because that helps with the immersion, that helps identify with these characters, that helps identify even if they are bad people like Tony Montana is supposed to be. he's not a good person. Let's be quite honest, he's not a good person, and he knows he's not a good person. He knows he's flawed. That's part of the reason why one of the storyline elements is that he tries to keep his sister out of that world that he's in. You want even more proof? Just look last year, Star Wars The Force Awakens. You know what? I didn't think Rey was a Mary Sue. I didn't think that at all. I thought that it set the tone for some things that happen down the line. Of course, she's gonna show her flaws later on down. Now, of course, they could have made her flaws be a little bit better represented, and of course, that could have been one of the minor things they could have fixed, but all in all, that film was received exceptionally well. And you know what? It had a female protagonist, and you know what happened? Yeah, that got loads of money at the box office. So no, you cannot blame the failure of Ghostbusters on the fact that people quote-unquote hated that there were women involved in the lead roles, because that wasn't the reason. If that was a reason, then all the films I just mentioned would have sunk. Even in the 80s, even in the 90s, they would have sunk hard. But you know what happened? They didn't. This movie had potential to be better. The 4 women that were cast deserve better. And you know what? The feminists that wanted this to be good so they could have something to say, hey, this works, do more like this, deserve better than that script. Deserve better than what they got out of Paul Feig and Amy Pascal. And maybe it will come out of the Ghostbusters Active Force animated TV series. Maybe the animated Ghostbusters feature that has been talked about will do better. And it probably should do better, because it is going to be in the capable hands of Ivan Reitman, who has been wanting to do a expansion for some time now, and the only thing that's been blocking him is the involvement of Bill Murray, or I should say lack thereof. I don't know what's been stopping him from doing that. And of course, the death of Harold Ramis, who played Egon in the first 2 movies, and Ghostbusters 2 is not that bad of a film, by the way, in defense of, yeah. But at the end of the day, these 4 women and the movement for more minority representation as significant roles in films deserve better than a script that ends up becoming a house of cards for somebody to work around. You would not expect any talented actor or actress, male or female, any sort of minority, to be able to work with a script or a lackluster visual representation of a film like that. You would not expect anybody to be able to work with that, despite them doing well and trying to do so. And if this thing was directed by Ivan Reitman and those 4 women got to work with him instead of Paul Feig, I have a feeling that this film would be a whole lot better, and the 4 women would be served a whole lot better with a much better script than what they were given, a whole much better situation than what they were given. And with that, that's going to do it for this edition of the special report. I know there was a lot of strong opinions in there, and there's a lot of strong feelings about stuff like this. I do try my best to be as fair as possible. Please subscribe for more geek gaming culture. I try to put videos out as much as I possibly can. And of course, please leave a comment down below about what you thought about the video and what you thought about the topics that were discussed. Please try to be a civil-minded human being, and please try to respect other people's opinions. This is a channel that thrives on civil debate and civil discussion about topics, not nasty vitriol, and I want to make sure that stays off of my channel. With that having been said, thank you very much for listening to me ramble again. My name is JD Shadow, and of course, that just happened.